In my time playing the Pokemon TCG, I have largely focused my deck building around one card, Miraidon EX. For basically the entire time I've played this game, I've run Miraidon EX or Miraidon in Joltik box, and for a few weeks I wanted to give myself a break, play a different deck. I had played Raging Bolt once to a local before, but I wanted to try my hand at another deck. So I looked at the meta and decided what I wanted to play, and I figured I would play Marnie's Grimmsnarl for 2 weeks, a new archetype that was seeing some success, including one person who top 8'd the NIAC tournament, and I just felt like the deck was fun. I was playing it on ladder, online, and it was proving to be quite a large success. However, sometimes RNG does not go your way, and in the 10 rounds I had played with that deck over the course of 2 locals, the deck did not like me. I drew terrible hands, I would prize terrible things that would make matchups basically unwinnable. So, with the challenge coming up at my home store, I figured, what should I play for this if I want to give myself the best chance of winning? A deck that clearly, in theory, should be better, or go back to my old favorite Miraidon EX. I know that I was simply unlucky, but I just wanted to try my hand at a deck I was more comfortable with, that I knew what to do better if my prize cards were bad, so I went with Miraidon EX, and not Joltik box, even though that is a more consistent and solid option, because I have lost a lot of dice rolls when I've played Joltik box recently, and it feels really bad to go first with that deck. Even though it feels fine to go second, I didn't want to take that chance. I wanted a deck I could be comfortable with going first or second, so I locked in Miraidon EX, especially in the wake of the new Black, White, Bolt, Flare, what's the set called? Especially considering Black Bolt and White Flare were coming out, I wanted to get re-comfortable with this deck as I plan to run it with the new Zekrom EX as well as potentially the Dynamotor engine. While this deck currently isn't as powerful as it is going to be once these cards are legal, I wanted to try my hand with my old favorite, so let's run through the 60 cards. Firstly, we have 2 Miraidon EX. With the Tandem Unit ability, it lets you get 2 basic lightning Pokemon out. Yes, Smash people, I know it's electric Pokemon, but the TCG is weird, don't ask, I don't know why they call it lightning. Which helps get other attackers such as Iron Hands EX. This card's second attack is one of the most important in the deck, as Ampy very much can take an extra prize card on your opponent's Pokemon, being able to take 2 prize cards on basic or small HP Pokemon. Yes, it costs 4 energy, but this deck will have a way to get that fairly consistency, I'll explain in a bit. Next is the 2/2 of Magnemite and Magneton. The Magneton with the Overvolt Discharge ability helps get your second Pokemon in play with enough energy, as well as a few other cool plays which you will see later. The last lightning Pokemon is a recently released card, Zeraora, which is a 1-prize Pokemon that has a powerful attack to do 210 damage on a benched EX Pokemon, which can KO almost all of the common support Pokemon like Pheasantipity EX, Mew EX, Latias EX, and Squawkabilly EX. For the support Pokemon, we have Squawkabilly EX to help you with your turn 1 consistency with its Squawk and Seize ability, which lets you, only on turn 1, discard your hand and draw 6 new cards. Latias EX helps all of your basics have no retreat costs, which is nice to pivot your Pokemon in and out of the active without wasting the precious energy that you need to attack. Mew EX is part of your draw engine with the restart ability to draw your hand up to 3 cards, and Miraidon often plays their hand down small, so it is useful to see those extra cards. Next is Iron Bundle, which can allow some Pokemon-based Gust with the Hyper Blower ability, which is really nice when you want to be using your supporter for Arven for Electric Generator as opposed to the Gusts like Boss's Orders. Pheasantipity EX's Flip the Script ability allows you to draw 3 cards when your Pokemon gets KO'd, which is one of the best abilities in the entire game. Sometimes Miraidon can struggle to close out bigger damage games, so I have the Blood Moon Ursaluna to attack for 240 damage late game, especially with no energy cost, and then my spiciest tech of the Volcanion EX to burn Pokemon to go through Pikachu EX's ability, let Miraidon hit for 240 for Raging Bolt specifically, and in general help against stall. That's it for the Pokemon cards. Let's go with the trainer cards. The main trainer card of this deck is the 4 Electric Generator. This accelerates your energy and is basically your entire game plan. You want consistency of Pokemon, so I went with 4 Nest Balls to search basic Pokemon, and 3 Ultra Ball to give 7 trainer-based Pokemon searches. For recovery, I run 1 Night Stretcher to recycle 1 Pokemon or energy to my hand, which can be very useful, and a Super Rod, mostly to get lightning Pokemon or energy back into the deck to either Miraidon them back out, or give higher odds for Electric Generator to hit higher numbers. I run 1 Counter Catcher since I often put my opponent on odd prizes with the Magneton Overvolt Discharge ability, which grants them an extra prize card, so this is live in most games unless I'm steamrolling them. For my A spec, I went with the Secret Box over the Prime Catcher. I feel like it has too much utility compared to Prime Catcher, which only does one thing, whereas Secret Box can get you the supporters you want, the items you want, it can bump stadiums, and of course it can get you the precious tools that you need to survive in certain matchups, especially like Dragapult EX. I feel like it's good early and late game, whereas Prime Catcher, if you open it and you need to squawk ability, your ace spec is gone for the entire game, whereas Secret Box, you're still going to get a lot of utility out that, and then end up being able to squawk ability. The supporter list is simple: 4 Arven for item and tool search, 1 Iono for some hand disruption or a way to get me out of a bad hand, and 3 Boss's Orders for gusting, but I have the bundle and counter catcher, so I feel like I didn't need 4. For my tools, I had 1 Bravery Charm to make it harder to KO my Pokemon with 50 extra HP, 1 Rescue Board to help make it easier for my Pokemon to retreat, and then 1 Defiance Band to bump damage if I am behind in prize cards, which, similar to counter catcher, can be relevant fairly often, especially against Raging Bolt and Eevee Box. Since I have Secret Box in the deck, I wanted a few stadiums in the deck, so I have 1 Levincia for energy recycling from my discard either late game after I've used my Magnetons or if I can't find my Magnetons. It also essentially makes using Ultra Ball free because I can discard 2 energy and then put them right back in my hand, which is really useful. And I went with the 1 Team Rocket's Watchtower to hopefully preemptively stop my opponents from using their colorless Pokemon abilities such as Fan Rotom, Noctowl, or even some late game Blood Moon Ursaluna when I don't need that card. To top it off, we have 16 Lightning Energy to maximize Electric Generator hits. With all that said, let's go to the games. Round 1 is up and I have to fight my friend Vanessa on Raging Bolt. I always run into Raging Bolt round 1 at locals for some reason. Whether it's normal tournaments, cups, challenges, I always run into Raging Bolt round 1. I don't know why. I open up with Squawkabillion and I'm able to set up my board with Miraidon, Iron Hands with 1 energy, and Magnemite. After using Squawk and Seize, I try to use Nest Ball for Latias, but I didn't realize in my first go-throughs of my deck that it was prized, so I get out Volcanion instead, since this is a relevant matchup for it, but in hindsight, this was a mistake since it needs to combo with Latias anyway. Off my original hand and my Squawk and Seize fresh 6 cards, I don't have an Electric Generator, so I pass for turn. Vanessa uses her Fan Rotom to search for 3 Hoot Hoots, puts an Area 0 down, attaches an energy to her Fan Rotom, gusts up my Magnemite and KOs it to disallow any Magnetons the next turn since I discarded a lot of energy off of that Squawk and Seize. On my turn, I play my second Magnemite and then use Arven for Secret Box and Bravery Charm. I know that if I get Rocket's Watchtower, she would either need to have one of her 2 remaining stadiums in her small hand or top deck it, so I know that that is my win condition. I also grab Rescue Board, Electric Generator, and another Arven for next turn off of the Secret Box. I Generator and only hit 1, so I attach another energy from hand to my Iron Hands, Rescue Board my Squawk to retreat it, and take 1 prize by knocking out the Fan Rotom with Arm Press. I would have loved to get 2 prize cards here with an Ampy very much, but sometimes the luck does not go your way. Unfortunately, she does top deck the Jamming Tower to remove my stadium and then ends up with a strong board with Teal Mask Ogerpon, Pheasantipity EX, and Iron Leaves EX in play. KOs my Magnemite, disallowing the Magneton play for my next turn, and I am a little bit stuck. On my turn, I just Super Rod the Magnemites and Magneton back into my deck, attach an energy, and then Ampy very much the Fan Rotom. This turn makes it apparent how nice it would have been to get 2 off of the first Electric Generator, because now I would have had 2 Ampy very much KOs and only been at 2 prizes remaining, but instead, I need 2 full extra turns because I am not able to take 3 prize cards in 1 turn unless they bench their Squawkabilly EX for some reason, but after turn 1, that's not going to happen. Vanessa does Raging Bolt things, puts down an Area 0, gets Latias EX, Raging Bolt EX, and then Professor Sada's Vitality to get enough energy on board for Bellowing Thunder to knock out my Iron Hands EX. At this point, I had a decision to make. Should I KO the active Raging Bolt with Blood Moon Ursaluna, or use Magneton to power up a Zeraora to knock out the Pheasantipity EX on bench? The only way to remove the Ursaluna would be to get another Raging Bolt EX on board and get 4 energy across the board as well, but if I used Magneton and Zeraora, she would be at 1 prize card and would only need to find a 100 damage attack on the active Zeraora. I went with the Blood Moon Ursaluna play and was immediately punished as she only had 1 grass energy in hand, Prime Catcher, and Baby Bolt. She top decks Nest Ball, so if I went with the Zeraora play, she would have been able to Nest Ball for Mew EX, put down the Baby Bolt and Teal Vance to see more cards and lower her hand, but that is a lot different than flip the script for 3 and then do all those things minus the Mew EX draw anyway. But since she drew the Mew EX off the Fez draw, she was able to Nest Ball for Raging Bolt, use Professor Sada's Vitality to accelerate energy to both her Raging Bolt EX and Baby Bolt, and off the Sada she drew the energy, which she ended up putting onto her Raging Bolt EX for the knockout. The sequence would have been a little different had I KO'd the Pheasantipity, but with Nest Ball plus the Sada she saw off of Teal Dance, I don't think it would have mattered. I was a bit disappointed losing my first round, but learned to not put down Volcanion unless I had the Latias EX in my deck or in play, and in hindsight probably should have just Nest Balled for the second Magnemite so that way I had access to it the turn 2, and therefore would have been able to Ampy very much on that first Fan Rotom. I knew I was going to be recording the whole event, win or lose, and my friends came up to me and were like, hey, this would be a bad event to go 0-5, haha, and I was a little bit nervous about that because sometimes when you start badly, you just get bad luck for the rest of the day. That happened with my Grimmsnarl EX deck, but let's see how round 2 went. Round 2 was against my friend Jose, a potent Charizard player who I have had close games with in the past. Unfortunately for him, it was sort of a non-game for him. He goes first, attaches an energy to an active Charmander with one on the bench, and passes turn. I have an Iron Hands EX inactive, so I Nest Ball for Miraidon, Tandem Unit for Iron Hands and Magnemite, I Ultra Ball for Squawkabilly EX so I can see more cards, and hoping I see another Ball Surge for Latias to get that Iron Hands out of the active. Before I use Squawk and Seize, I Electric Generator for 2 energy onto Iron Hands. I attach a 3rd energy onto that Iron Hands for turn, and then Squawk and Seize where I do have an Ultra Ball for that Latias EX. I Arven for a Bravery Charm and another Electric Generator to ensure that in the case of a Rare Candy Charizard play, my Iron Hands doesn't get one hit KO'd with 280 HP on my Iron Hands EX. I whiffed my second generator entirely, but still KO'd the Charizard with Arm Press, and because I only took 1 prize card, I didn't need to put Bravery Charm onto the Iron Hands, so I kept it in hand. Jose uses the supporter Brock Scouting to search for 2 basic Pokemon from his deck, grabbing Cleffa and Pheasantipity EX to hopefully find something to get him out of this hole. Unfortunately, he doesn't find much, so he evolves his Charmander to Charmeleon, uses Cleffa's Grasping Draw for 3, and passes. On my turn, I attach an Energy and Bravery Charm onto my active Iron Hands EX, Arven for Ultra Ball and Rescue Board, Ultra Ball my hand away to evolve my Magnemite to Magneton, and then Ambu very much the Cleffa for 2 prize cards. Even if Charizard does come out this turn, which is likely to happen, I would only be getting hit for 270, so Jose would need to find some damage modifier like Max Belt in order to take the KO on my Iron Hands. Unfortunately, even after it flipped the script, he doesn't have a way to find Charizard, and after benching another Charmander, he has to Iono away his huge hand of 11 cards to try to see something. And unfortunately, even with that, he still doesn't find his Charizard EX, so he puts a Monkey Dory down, counter catches up Magneton to force an energy to retreat, and passes. I fortunately had the energy in hand to retreat my Magneton, bring up the Iron Hands EX with energy, and gust up the Pheasantipity EX to damage it to put it in Ampy Very Much KO range for 3 prizes. Since Ampy Very Much will take an extra prize card no matter what, if I KO a 2 prize Pokemon, such as the EX Pokemon, I will actually take 3 prize cards, so I was 1 attack away from winning. I could have KO'd the Charmeleon, but know that Charizard EX decks don't play a lot of energy, and so the likelihood of having an energy in 3 cards plus the top deck to retreat the Pheasantipity was lower than the likelihood of flip the script for Arven for Rare Candy Charizard. He did have the energy to retreat, and he does so, but just passes the turn anyway. I don't want to complicate things, and I don't have a Gust in hand for games, so I just Ampy Very Much his active Charmander and go down to 1 prize. He finally does find the Charizard EX to start attacking, but it was way too late with too much of a deficit, as I Tandem Unit out the Zeraora, use Magneton's Overvolt Discharge ability to load up 3 energies onto it, and then use Thunder Raid to knock out the Pheasantipity EX on the bench for game. He had a really unlucky game, but after the unluck of Vanessa drawing her stadium, I didn't feel too bad about it. On to round 3. Round 3, I'm up against an unfamiliar Gardevoir player, so won't be going by first name basis here. I'm going first, and I Ultra Ball for a Miraidon as Squawkabilly is prized, Tandem Unit out Magnemite and Iron Hands, attach an energy to Iron Hands, and pass with the Magnemite inactive. They have turn 1 Secret Box, so things are looking a little bit scary. However, Gardevoir can take some time to develop, so I know I can still win. Put Artisan down, which allows them to search for a basic to put on their bench, search for the 3rd Ralts, they Arven for an Earthen Vessel and TM Turbo Energize, Earthen Vessel to search for 2 energy from their deck, and TM Evil will Ralts on bench to a Curlia and pass turn. I Arven for Secret Box and Rescue Board, use Secret Box for Bravery Charm, Electric Generator, and Arven as both stadiums are in my hand already, so I can't search for one. I Electric Generator and hit 2, but unfortunately do not have an energy in hand or in discard to use with Lavincia, put Rescue Board on the Magnemite inactive, retreat it, and Arm Press the active Ralts for 1 prize. These early whiffs on Ampy Very Much can be really costly, so let's see what happens. Fortunately, my opponent doesn't have a ton to do even with the flip the script off of a Pheasantipity EX, so they bench 3 Monkey Dory with the help of a bumped Stadium for their 2nd Artisan, and use TM Turbo Energize to get 2 Psychic Energies out of the deck, 1 on Curlia and 1 on one of the Monkey Dories. On my turn, I Arven for an Ultra Ball to thin my hand for Mew EX, who restarts for 3, which lets me evolve both my Magnemites to Magnetons, and then I Arm Press the active Curlia for my 2nd prize. I again don't have any energy in the discard, so I cannot use my Magneton's ability to take 2 prizes with an Ampy Very Much. However, this doesn't matter that much, as now I'm back on even prize cards, so if I take 2 prizes on my next 2 attacks, I should be fine. I know that once my Iron Hands EX gets KO'd, I will be able to use Magneton's ability to charge up another Pokemon, so I have follow-up no matter what. My opponent promotes their Monkey Dory, attaches a Dark Energy to a benched Monkey Dory, and then uses Iono to shuffle both of our hands, and we draw up to our number of prize cards. I draw 4, and they draw 6. They do find their Gardevoir EX and evolved it from the bench Curlia, also bench a Screamtail, use Flip the Script, but end up gusting up my Miraidon with Counter Catcher to KO it with 1 Monkey Dory Mind Bend ability, plus the 190 from Gardevoir's Miracle Force. I promote my Mew EX since it has free retreat cost. I use Super Rod, putting both Miraidon EXs back into my deck, as well as my Iron Bundle, which I discarded early, but I use the Artisan already on field to get back the the Iron Bundle and use the Hyper Blower ability to get a smaller Pokemon from the bench into the active instead of the 310 HP Gardevoir. This is one of my favorite things to do with my opponent's Artisan, as consistent Gust is really important for Miraidon decks, especially considering Iron Hands EX doesn't do that much damage. I attach a Lightning Energy onto the Iron Hands EX from my hand, bench Zeraora, Electric Generator, and hit 2 and attack them to the Zeraora for some insurance for next turn. I retreat the Mew EX into Iron Hands EX and Ampy-Very-Much the Munkidori, putting me down to 2 prizes. On their turn, they use the Psychic Embrace ability to load up all of the energies in their discard onto their Gardevoir, Iona me down to 2, and use 2 Adrenabrain abilities on their Munkidoris plus Miracle Force to KO my Iron Hands. Unfortunately for them, they left Pheasantipity EX on their bench, so once they Iono'd, I knew I had the game with an energy attached from hand to Zeraora, and using Thunder Raid from Zeraora to KO their benched Pheasantipity EX for the game. I'm 2-1 now, and the deck is working a lot better, even though I still am missing my turn 1 Ampy-Very-Much as our turn 2 since I'm going first. That can be really devastating. Round 4, I fought a Grimmsnarl player. I started with my Miraidon EX in the active, so I tandem unit for Iron Hands and Magnemite, Nest Ball for Squawkabilly EX, which can be kinda scary in this matchup, attach a Rescue Board to Miraidon, Ultra Ball for Iron Bundle, and then use Squawk and Seize for 6 fresh cards. Off the Squawk and Seize, I see an Electric Generator, which hits for 2, attach them onto the Iron Hands EX, along with an energy from hand, and pass. My opponent puts a Dark Energy on their active Snorunt, activates Artisan, and uses Professor's Research to discard their hand and draw 7 cards. They bench an Impidimp, Artisan for another Snorunt since it is a non-rulebox Pokemon, and TM Evo to a Morgrem and a Frostlass, so the damage begins adding up with that Freezing Shroud ability, which puts 10 damage on every Pokemon with an ability excluding Frostlass. This is the main way that the Marnie's Grimmsnarl deck deals damage to a lot of Pokemon, so it was a little scary to put my Squawkabilly EX down, but I needed to do it, otherwise I wouldn't really be able to play the game this turn. I start my turn with Secret Box for Electric Generator, Lavincia, Bravery Charm, and Boss's Orders so I can target the Morgrem to disallow any Grimmsnarls from coming into play next turn. I also tandem unit to put Zeraora on the bench, which in hindsight was a mistake since it was unnecessary, but I wanted it there to cover if the Grimmsnarl deck plays Pheasantipity EX, which some of them do. My Electric Generator hits 2, so I put 1 on the Iron Hands and 1 on Zeraora, promote my Iron Hands EX thanks to the Rescue Board, bump the Artisan with my Lavincia, boss up the Morgrem, and KO it with Ampy-Very-Much for 2 prizes. Finally, a perfect first 2 turns to get my earliest attack with Ampy-Very-Much. This was looking much better. On their turn, they counter-capture my Squawkabilly EX to try and buy some time for the Frostlass to add a lot of damage, Ultra Ball for another Impidimp, and then Iono, which finds them their Secret Box. They search for Iono, Nest Ball, the Spikemuth Gym, and Rescue Board. They Nest Ball for a Munkidori, use Spikemuth to search for Grimmsnarl, evolve into a second Frostlass, promote their Munkidori to preserve that Frostlass, and pass. Now with 2 Frostlass, we will be taking a lot of damage between turns, and it adds up really quickly. But unfortunately, I didn't have any energy in the hand after the Iono, and my Rescue Board is already on Miraidon EX, so I use Bundle to give myself the bench space in case I can find Latias, and I end up bossing up the Munkidori back into the active, and I have to pass. On their turn, they begin by involving their Impidimp into Morgrem, thank goodness, because if they had the Grimmsnarl here with the rare candy, I would have been in a lot of trouble. Thankfully, they also did not have the energy to get Munkidori out of the active, so they just passed their turn. I top deck the energy to retreat my Squawkabilly onto the bench my Pheasantipity EX for next turn's draw support in case they do KO a Pokemon, and Ampy-Very-Much the Munkidori. I know my Iron Hands EX is safe this turn because it has no ability, so it has not been taking Frostlass effect damage. Grimmsnarl only does 180 damage, and with only one Munkidori Adrenabrain ability available, they can only do 210 damage max. Because of that, all I need next turn is a Gust effect, and I will win the game. They evolve their Morgrem to Grimmsnarl and use its ability to get 2 energy onto it and Iono again. Thankfully, I didn't have game in hand already, so the 2 extra cards from Iono get me closer to my win condition. They get another Munkidori down, but don't have an energy on it, and swing into my Iron Hands for the 180 damage. My Magneton gets KO'd in between turns from the damage from Frostlass, so I'm not able to activate my Pheasantipity EX this turn, as technically it wasn't KO'd on my opponent's turn, but the time between turns. However, the Iono got me into an Arven, which I used for Night Stretcher for the Iron Bundle in my discard, use the Hyper Blower ability, and take 2 more prizes with Ampy-Very-Much for the game. 3-1. One more win and I'm almost surely guaranteed a top 8, as the person who I lost to, Vanessa, was doing quite well at the time. Round 5 I play against my friend Licia, who is on Labubu Gardevoir EX. Why is it Labubu Gardevoir? I'm still not sure, but she runs a one of Dedenne, which can use an ability to get a trainer back into her hand, so I guess that? Licia is also the person who denied me a League Cup victory, prevailing over me in the finals a few months back on my Joltik box, so I wanted my revenge. Unfortunately, I look at my hand and it is really bad. Latias EX, Iron Hands EX, and 5 energy. I have nothing to do, so I just bench both Pokemon, put a Lightning Energy onto Iron Hands EX, and pass. Licia, on the other hand, started with Mew EX, benches a Munkidori, and uses Arven immediately for Secret Box and TM Evo. The Secret Box gets them another TM Evo since she discarded it as cost for the Secret Box, Iono, Artisan, and Earthen Vessel to search for some energy for when Gardevoir is more in play. She uses that Earthen Vessel for a Psychic and Dark Energy, Artisans for a Ralts from deck, and uses TM Evolution with Mew to evolve the Ralts into a Kirlia. I draw Iono to help relieve me from my awful hand, thankfully, but before I do use the Artisan that my opponent put onto the field in order to search for an Iron Bundle because, again, we love Pokemon-based gusting in this house. Plus, there's an added benefit against Gardevoir of gusting around the Pokemon that have a lot of energy onto them because it limits severely what Gardevoir can do. I attach energy to Iron Hands EX and use Iono, which draws me into a significantly better hand. I bench Magnemite and use an Electric Generator for 2 to put onto my Iron Hands, and then use the Iron Bundle to remove the Mew EX from the active because I cannot KO that in one hit. She promotes Munkidori. I bump the Artisan with Levincia I drew off of the Iono and use Ampy very much on the Munkidori that she promoted. Not only did the Iono help me a lot, but it also seemingly ruined Licia's hand as there was no Gardevoir in her hand, putting her quite far behind. She benched a Munkidori, Night Stretcher for the Dark Energy that was on her Munkidori I KO'd, and Nest Ball for Pheasantipity EX to hopefully see Gardevoir this turn with the Flip the Script ability. Unfortunately for me, it does give her an Ultra Ball which can be used for Gardevoir. Damn, I thought I had this in the bag. The Flip the Script also gave her an Arven, which she uses to get another Ultra Ball for search for a Ralts for follow-up Gardevoir in case I KO the one she already has. Thankfully, similar to the Grimmsnarl match, one Miracle Force and a Munkidori Adrenabrain is not enough to KO Iron Hands, so I know that I am safe for another turn. She still maximizes the damage on that Iron Hand, so it has 220 damage on it, 10 HP away from the knockout, which she can easily get with an Adrenabrain next turn. On my turn, I top deck Miraidon EX, bench it, and use Tandem Unit for Zeraora and a second Magnemite so I don't need to worry about both being KO'd, losing the access to Magneton. I attach a Lightning Energy to Zeraora, bosses orders up the Munkidori, and KO with Ampy very much. 2 prizes away yet again. Licia's next turn is honestly pretty cool. She knows she has to play around the Zeraora, KOing the benched Mew or Pheasantipity, so her goal is clear. Remove one of them from play with a Professor Sturo scenario, which puts any benched Pokemon back into your hand, and get Mew EX into the active. Thankfully, Gardevoir EX is a very flexible deck, so she ends up doing just that while also counter-catchering up my Miraidon and using Mew's Genome Hacking attack to copy Miraidon's Photon Blaster attack, which is just enough to basically knock itself out. Also on the turn, she KO'd my Iron Hands EX with an Adrenabrain from a new Munkidori. I need a Magneton to have any chance of winning this game, and I don't have it in hand yet, but thankfully I top deck an Ultra Ball which allows me to search my deck for any Pokemon after discarded 2 cards, and I also have Boss's Orders in hand to put the Mew EX back onto the bench by gusting up literally anything else. I am then able to use Magneton's Overvolt Discharge ability to KO itself and put 3 energy onto the Zeraora and use the Thunder Raid on the Mew EX for the KO. There were a couple of other lines I had since I had a Night Stretcher in hand, so I could have Night Stretchered back an Iron Bundle or Night Stretchered back the Miraidon EX that was just KO'd and then use the Magneton ability to put the energy onto the Miraidon, but all those lines are really good to think of, but I was mostly focused on the Zeraora KO and it worked out fine, so it didn't really matter. I just love how flexible my deck is and the ability to make multiple different decisions still leading to the same result, and now I'm 4-1. As a reminder, I started off 0-1, so this is literally the best I could be doing, and most of the time people will just agree to a draw in the final rounds with 4-1 records because you are guaranteed top 8 in that position, but because this was a league challenge, there were championship points on the line, so people were a little bit less inclined to draw that final round so they had a better chance of placing high and getting more of those championship points. My opponent for round 6 wants to play it out, so on to round 6. For my round 6, I start with Squawkabilly EX and my opponent starts with Mew EX. I go first and I have no idea what my opponent is playing, but my first turns are always fairly similar. I Ultra Ball for a Miraidon EX to Tandem Unit out Magnemite and Iron Hands, attach an energy onto Iron Hands, bench Pheasantipity, and use the Squawkancy's ability to discard the rest of my hand and draw 6. Unfortunately, I don't have any other good cards to play, so I just pass the turn. My opponent benches Teal Mask Ogerpon and I think, okay, it's Raging Bolt, and they also bench Pheasantipity EX. Unfortunately for them, no other cards come down, so they just pass the turn. On my turn, I use Tandem Unit to double check my deck before using Nest Ball for Latias EX. I'm not making the same mistake that I did that first round. I didn't have any great cards in my hand, so I attach an energy to Squawkabilly EX to use Motivate to deal 20 damage to Mew EX and load up 1 energy from the discard pile onto the Iron Hands EX. Slow starts for both of us, but it still seems like his is worse. My opponent draws and passes. They have nothing to do. From the video, I can see he has 2 Noctowl in his hand and a Fan Rotom, but Fan Rotom's Fan Call ability only works in turn 1, so it's useless right now. That's the thing about Miraidon though, is sometimes a lot of decks like the other stage 2 decks like Grimmsnarl and Dragapult give the opponent a lot of time to get back into the game, whereas Miraidon EX really doesn't. Even with my bad start, I'm still in the driver's seat for sure. I top deck an electric generator and hit 2 off of it, put them onto the Miraidon EX on my bench and an energy from my hand, retreat into it, and use boss's orders on the Pheasantipity EX to KO it to try to limit their draw ability. On their return, they do have the Night's Treasure to get the Pheasantipity back from their discard, bench it, and use Flip the Script, and are able to bench 2 Hoot Hoots, one from an Ultra Ball. When they use the Ultra Ball, they discarded a Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, so I go, oh, okay, it's Terra Box or Ogerpon Box. Way less scary to me than Raging Bolt. So it's now turn 3, and I finally know what my opponent is playing. That's not a good sign for them. They bench a Latias EX, attach a rescue board onto a Hoot Hoot, and use their supportive Return of Professor Turo's Scenario to put the damaged Mew EX into their hand. They rebench it, and they were just trying to thin their deck so that they can draw 1 card off of Mew's restart ability. They attach a Water of Energy to Mew EX and pass their turn. On my turn, I'm able to evolve my Magnemite into Magneton, and I use Arven to grab Secret Box and Defiance Band. I activate that Secret Box, discarding a Magnemite, Rescue Board, but most importantly, a Lightning Energy. I search for Bravery Charm, Boss's Orders, and most importantly, Rocket's Watchtower, shutting off any potential Noctowl plays on the next turn, unless the stadium gets bumped like against Vanessa. Haha, wasn't that crazy? Wasn't that so fun and cool that I should have won that game? Something important to note is that Miraidon EX's attack states, and I quote, "During your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack." I was reading off the card directly. However, that condition gets removed when Miraidon is put onto the bench, so I retreat it into the Magneton that I have on field. I then use the Overvault Discharge ability of the Magneton to knock itself out, putting 1 energy onto the Iron Hands EX, and then re-promoting the Miraidon, which now can attack freely. I bench Zeraora just in case my opponent gets through this turn, put down the Team Rocket's Watchtower, attach a Bravery Charm to Miraidon just in case because I forget the damage that this deck is able to do, and KO the active Latias EX for 2 more prizes. If they don't see a stadium in their top deck and their Flip the Script ability that Pheasantipity EX has, I basically win the game on the spot. He doesn't see it, so he scoops. With that, I have achieved a 5-1 record, and I ended up with 2nd place as there was only one other person above me with a 5-0-1 record, and I was the only 5-1 since most people just intentionally drew their last round, so it was a 5-0-1, me, and then a bunch of people that were 4-1-1. There were also 2 4-2s, and my opponent from the last round as well as Vanessa, who beat me round 1, were both in there. I'm actually really happy I only ran into 1 Raging Bolt. There's a lot of Raging Bolt players at my locals, and I don't particularly like that matchup. I tend to get fairly unlucky in those sets, kind of like how I did versus Vanessa, so I'm really glad that I was able to limit it and play the stage 2 decks where I'm able to ampy very much a bunch of smaller Pokemon consistently. It makes my job a lot easier. And that's not to say that what I fought against isn't meta. Grimmsnarl EX and Gardevoir EX are 2 of the top decks, especially in this current format before the next pack comes out, and Charizard has been picking up a lot of steam. Again, this is before Black Bolt and White Flare were legal, so even though Miraidon EX is going to get a lot better, the meta will shift quite a bit. It feels nice to win with a deck that I know is underpowered relative to what is about to happen, and I just love it. It's my favorite deck, and it felt good to succeed with it, even though the deck still gave me some struggle with some of my generators missing at the early sets. My main takeaways from playing in this tournament is I don't think the Volcanion EX was worth it. It didn't really come up. It needs to combo with too many cards, basically just the Latias, but that's a lot of bench space considering I don't run any Terra Pokemon to use Area 0 Underdepths to make my bench space 8, so it takes up a lot of space, and I don't think the damage rolls are worth it. I technically think it would have had its uses had I not prized my Latias EX, but I don't think it would have mattered in that matchup given how it went anyway. But I also admittedly didn't play against the 2 other matchups it would be useful against, which are Joltik Box and Eevee Box. The other takeaway is, wow, Zeraora is just an insane card. It helped me clutch so many games or make my opponent have to play around things so awkwardly, or they couldn't, so it just won so many games. It's ridiculous. It is such a good card. Like, the only way around it is to literally play 0 support Pokemon, no Mew, no Latias, no Pheasantipity EX, and no decks are really able to do that at the moment. And that's largely because of how much pressure Iron Hands puts on cards. I take my early KOs, and if they don't draw the outs immediately, they have to put down their Pheasantipity, which just leaves it as a sitting duck later in the game. The next meta, in my opinion, will be very good for Miraidon EX with the release of Zekrom EX, and again, potentially the Dynamotor ability with the Eels. I don't know how useful that's going to be. I don't personally have it currently in my deck lists that I'm running, and basically what I'm going to be doing is swapping out the Blood Moon Ursaluna and Volcanion EX for 2 Zekrom EX, and that's literally all the changes I'm making right now. I think it's going to be the second best turbo deck behind the Goldengo EX deck, because that deck just seems ridiculous, but I'll take second compared to the potentially best deck in the format. But it will also do better against certain decks that Goldengo will struggle a little bit more with, such as the single prize decks like Ethan's Typhlosion, as well as the Grimmsnarl deck, which doesn't have to evolve into Grimmsnarl later in the game and can just focus on the Frostlass damage. It is always surprising to me how slept on Miraidon EX is. I know that it was popular before rotation, and I know a couple of players like Azul GG won a regional with it, but I still feel like like even in that meta, Miraidon EX was slept on, and I feel like that's happening again going into the World Championships. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a player who piloted Miraidon EX with the new Zekrom to really good placements, even potentially winning the tournament, because again, it does well versus a lot of the meta decks, including Gardevoir, including Grimmsnarl, including Dragapult, and that's still going to be like 60 to 70% of the entire field, even if Goldengo ends up being number 1. I would say it loses slightly to Goldengo because we're both trying to do the same thing and it's just a little bit more consistent for Goldengo, but I'll take a 45-55 matchup, that's fine by me. And also, depending on how prevalent that deck is, Miraidon still can take out a couple of cards to make room for things like our own Genesect to turn off the ace specs of every deck, and that's really, really important versus Goldengo. And yeah, that's going to be about it for this one. I hope you all enjoyed. As always, social media and partner stuff is down below. Let me know if you have other questions about Pokemon, because I would love to answer them in the comments, or if you want me to make other types of Pokemon content, let me know. I would appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time. Peace.